Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video today. So I've been extremely inconsistent with my channel and I wholeheartedly apologise to those of you that actually watch my videos and leave me such lovely comments. I'm going to be trying to get better at that. But I'm so glad to be back, and today I have a brand new unsolved case that I want to share with you. I don't know if this background is a little bit too much. Let me know in the comments. I just thought I'd try something new. But the case I'm going to be discussing today is that of Luke Durbin. Luke Durbin has been missing for 16 years after going for a night out clubbing and drinking with his friends in Ipswich, which he never returned home from. Suffolk Police have labelled this case as one of the most baffling, and it's easy to see why. So let's just get into today's case. So Luke was born on the 4th of December 1986 and he lived in Hollesley, which was in Suffolk near Ipswich. He lived with his mum Nikki and he had a younger sister named Alicia. Luke's dad wasn't in the picture for whatever reason, so it was just them three and they got on extremely well. At the time of Luke's disappearance, he was 19 and his younger sister Alicia was 17, so, you know, they're pretty close in age and they always got on. Luke was described as around 5'10". He had dark brown hair and blue eyes, and his personality was described as a really funny, caring and affectionate boy. He loved to play the guitar and he loved music. He went to school in Farlingay High School in Ipswich, and then when he left school he decided to go and study music, so he went to a music college, and this was in Colchester in Essex, so pretty far away from where he lived. It was around 20 miles, but I guess that's just the only place that he could kind of find to study music. So he travelled up to Colchester to study, but after about a year he sacked it in because it was a very long commute. It took him at least a couple of hours to get there and back, so it just wasn't really sustainable for him, which was a bit of a blow because that is kind of what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a music teacher, he wanted to teach music, but it is what it is. So after this point, Luke was kind of in that middle phase that I'm sure we've all been in. When you're young, you're trying to find a job that you want, but, you know, you keep going to all these different jobs and it's just not really cutting it. It's not really feeling like it's for you. So he went through a bit of a down period when, you know, he wasn't himself and he was kind of struggling a bit mentally because he's trying to find a job that he likes and he's trying to find some direction in life, which I can completely relate to, still going through it now. So he worked odd jobs, he did a bit of this, a bit of that, and then he ended up working at a greengrocer's, which is basically like a deli, and he found a job in Ipswich, which he grew to really enjoy in the end. He'd only been working at this job for around 6 weeks before he disappeared, and so far this was the best job that he had had. He got on really well with his manager. It just gave him a bit more of a balance and made him feel good. And he used to bring home groceries for his mum and his sister and he would cook them for them. I really feel for Luke and sympathise with him because, you know, this was back in 2006. It's 2022. I think a lot of us young people are still in that same position where we're trying to figure out what we want to do. We're doing all these different things to figure it out and it's stressful. So I can relate to Luke on that part a lot. So the day that Luke disappeared was on the 12th of May 2006. It was a Thursday and he had work the next day, but his friend Alex, who he went to school with, came down for the weekend. Alex was a chef and he'd moved away with his parents, so he came back down to Ipswich and he really wanted Luke to take a few days off work so they could go out, get drunk, party, go clubbing. Their friend Zach also came along. Alex didn't live too far away, so the plan was that Luke was going to stay at Alex's house that night. So Luke actually rode a motorbike. He had recently bought it. His grandparents lent him the money, which was amazing for him. So what his plan was to go to Alex's house, bring an overnight bag, you know, his keys, wallet, basic possessions, and they basically went to Alex's. He left all of his things there and then they decided to meet Zach and get a cab into Ipswich. You can see in this photo that Luke is talking to Alex or Zach through the cab window, and then they basically just get in and they drive up to the local pubs. And I mean, this is a pretty typical weekend for most 19-year-old lads. So the night happened, they went to a few pubs, they had some drinks, and then it was time to head off to the club. So the club they went to was on Princess Road in Ipswich. It was called Zest nightclub, and holy shit, I looked into this club and it is absolutely awful. It's got such a bad reputation. The club's actually closed down now, which I think is in the best interest of everyone. So there was lots of violence, there was lots of sort of gang issues going on in the club, and unfortunately, the same year of 2006 when Luke went missing, a 24-year-old man named Jimoh Plunkett was actually shot dead in the club, which is extremely sad. He was 24 years old and he was brutally murdered. They didn't find out who did it, but basically the Ipswich council said that the club obviously had to close down. That wasn't the first time that there'd been violence and drugs and gang activity, and it was just in the best interest of everyone to not go to that club anymore, so consequently it closed down. On the night that Luke went missing, what he was wearing was a black/grey long-sleeved collared shirt under a reversible jacket, which was a grey colour. And he wore faded denim jeans and brown suede shoes. So they go to the club and, you know, they're having a good time. And at some point during the time at the club, Alex actually left and took a cab home because he was too drunk. He just had too much to drink and he wanted to call it a night. Something that should try to be avoided at all costs. You know, if one of you wants to go, you should try and all go together. I know people think that's mainly just for girls, but evidently there's still a risk for boys when they split up as well and they're drunk. So it's advised to always just stay with your friends and not take the risk of something like this happening. But nevertheless, they were 19-year-old guys. They obviously thought that they'd be okay to sort of separate. So Alex goes home and then Zach and Luke are left in the club. Now, at some point, they got separated. Zach went off to buy some drinks at the bar, and essentially Luke just strolled off and did his own thing. He may have gone and spoke to people or met up with some girls in the club. I'm not sure, but unfortunately they got separated. Something I forgot to mention is that Luke didn't bring his phone with him. At first I was thinking, who doesn't bring their phone out? And then I realised that I'm 23 years old and that is just the norm these days. But back in 2006, it wasn't actually very common to take your phone out clubbing, which sounds crazy, but you know, social media wasn't a thing, phones weren't even that developed. So he actually left his phone, his wallet, everything at Alex's house. He didn't bring his phone, and his friends said they'd pay for him that night, so he didn't even bring his wallet with any money or anything else in it. He only had his ID, which he took for entry. So at around 2 to 3 a.m, Luke leaves the club. He just walks out and decides to walk to Ipswich station because he can't find Zach. Alex has gone home and he's trying to get back to presumably Alex's house or his own house. He's then picked up on CCTV at around 3:45 when he's walking to the cab office. So if you're not from the UK, we have these small little shops basically of cabs. So you go in, speak to a receptionist, ask for a cab, and then the cabs are outside and you pay them. And it's just kind of a way to get home without, this is before Uber and, you know, Lyft and all of that. So this was the norm of how you'd get home. So from what we can tell, we can't know for sure, but Luke was basically trying to get a cab home, but he didn't have any money and he didn't have his phone. So he obviously tried his best to see if he could get a free ride, but the receptionist said, no, sorry, you can't get a cab unless you pay for it. So then she suggested that he call his mum and get her to pay over the phone with her bank details. But Luke very sweetly said, no, I don't want to make my mum up because she's asleep, which just shows how considerate he was to his mum. Luke is picked up on CCTV again and he's walking across Dog's Head Street to the bus station. So now he's trying to obviously see if he can get the bus home, but again, It's 4 a.m. in the morning. So obviously Luke at this point is in a really compromising situation. It's 4 a.m. He doesn't have a phone, he doesn't have any money, and he's by himself. And unfortunately, this is the last time that Luke was ever seen or heard from again. Shortly after Luke is seen on CCTV at Dogs Head Road, there's actually a vehicle that pulls up just around the same position that Luke was standing in. This was either a silver or white Volvo 440, and the registration was M206LYE. This was later discovered to be a false number plate, and police believe that this vehicle and whoever was in it holds vital information as to what happened to Luke after that point. But no one has ever come forward to be the driver of that car, and they've never been tracked down. Was this just a coincidence and someone just pulled up where he was standing, or could this be a big clue into his disappearance? So the next day, on Saturday the 13th of May, Luke doesn't arrive back at Alex's house, and Alex wakes up and just assumes that Luke has maybe gone home or has maybe met up with a girl, and he doesn't really think too much of it. However, he realises that Luke's motorbike is still outside and that his belongings are still at his house, so he does seem a bit concerned about it. So what he does is decides to ring Alicia, Luke's 17-year-old sister, and just lets her know that Luke didn't come back last night. And Alicia seemed really concerned. She just had a bad feeling that something had happened to her brother. So she told her mum and said, I'm really worried because I spoke to Alex and he hasn't seen Luke. And she said that Luke's meant to be at work. He's just at work, don't worry. But when Luke doesn't show up home after work, she begins to worry, and that's when she calls the Suffolk Police and tries to report Luke as missing. Unfortunately, in the UK, police don't normally act unless it's a minor on missing persons reports, unless it's been 24 hours, because they tend to assume that young people go off and they get drunk and then they don't come back, which is a way that we've probably lost a lot of young people, if we're being honest, because of the outlook police have on this. It was really out of character for Luke to just go missing and no one say anything, but I did read something online about one time Luke actually did run away back when he was about 18. He did actually go to France for a few days, but he did tell his sister Alicia, so it wasn't like he completely ran away, but he just didn't tell his mum. So I just thought that was interesting to note. But other than that, he was reliable, he liked his job, there's no reason he wouldn't show up, and it was just out of character for him, everyone agreed. And of course, he didn't even have a phone or a wallet on him, so because of this, when police did actually get involved, they were quite concerned for his welfare. So searches began for Luke on foot. There were helicopters and dogs circling that area on Princess Road and Dogs Head Road, and just trying to find out where he could be. His phone was seized from Alex's house, and there was over 100 messages with friends, family, co-workers, all leading up to the time he disappeared. So they searched all of that, and there was no indications of him wanting or planning to run away. Next, police began looking through CCTV of the bus station, Princess Road, all of them places he was at. They seized 60 hours of CCTV, and obviously the CCTV that I've put in this video is what they found. But after that point of him crossing over to the bus station, he's not picked up on CCTV again. Sadly, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. This is obviously Nikki's worst nightmare. She was desperate to find her son, and she had that added pressure on top of it of basically having to go back to work straight away, like within a few days of finding out her son was missing, because at the end of the day, she was still a mother to Alicia and she had a mortgage to pay. Luke and Alicia's dad was not in the picture, so I just can't imagine what that would be like, having to go back to work. I mean, I've had arguments with friends or broke up with a boyfriend in the past, and I've struggled to go to work the next day, which is pathetic. And this woman's son has gone missing and she's having to work, so I have so much respect for her, and she seems like an amazing woman from the interviews I've listened to. Oh, it's crazy. But even though she went back to work, she was on it every single day. She printed thousands of posters and leaflets. The bands, the Foo Fighters and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which were both bands that Luke liked, were actually due to play in Ipswich in the months after Luke disappeared. So friends went along to the concert, handed out flyers with Luke's face on them, and the community started to really get involved. There have, of course, like many other missing persons cases, been a few unconfirmed sightings, and it's no different for Luke. The first sighting, there was a witness reported seeing Luke at Vauxhall Stadium in Ipswich on May 12th, 2006. This is literally just a few days or a day after Luke going missing, and this was around the same area of the club. The second sighting, which is really interesting to police to this day, is that on May 13th, 2006, again, literally 2 days after he disappeared, between 11 and 2 p.m, 2 witnesses reported seeing Luke in a dark blue Renault Megane being driven by a black man near the Turban Centre car park in Woodbridge. So 2 people, they're separate people, mentioned seeing Luke with this man in a Renault, which is really interesting. What is he still doing in the same place 2 days later? The third sighting, which is quite chilling to say the least, is in late March 2007, so this is almost a year later. A girl from Luke's high school, a girl he knew well, reported seeing him outside Ipswich Theatre in Drury Lane in London. So we're talking miles away from Ipswich. She said that she was walking through London with her family, and then she saw a guy in the corner of her eye. She turned around to look at him, and she said she's 95% sure that that was Luke Durbin. She said that they actually looked at each other, exchanged eye contact for more than a few seconds, which to her was like a confirmation, like, oh my god, is that Luke? Because he was looking at her as well. Of course, we can't know for sure if this is him, but I think it's got a lot of credibility coming from a former classmate. In 2010, Suffolk Police actually changed Luke's case to a murder investigation. In 2011, a man and a woman in their 20s were arrested for identity fraud for using Luke's credit card information online to purchase things. But they did so back in 2007, but it was just released to us in 2011. I'm so sketched out by that because, okay, 1, how did they get his information? And 2, it's like they knew that they could use his information because he wasn't going to be using it because he wasn't alive. That's probably me jumping the gun a bit, but that is kind of what I think. And the fact that it was 1 year after kind of again makes me think that they were like hoping for the case to die down, not attract any attention, and then they're basically gonna use his identity online. You know, really eerie, but police brought them in for questioning. I don't know if they were charged, but they were just released in the end. So Luke's mum found it hard to discuss this aspect of Luke, but going into a missing persons investigation, she wants to do anything she can to get her son Luke back. So there was a part of Luke that was darker, let's say, than most people would have thought. Luke did regularly smoke weed. It's something that he'd done in the last couple of years, especially when he was having stresses around work. And she knew this, but she kind of just let him get on with it. He's a 19-year-old man. But a few months or years after Luke disappeared, she started to hear a lot of rumours that Luke was actually a small-time drug dealer in Ipswich. And that completely changed the game for her because she was like, wow, this gives us a whole other sort of theory that maybe he was involved with drugs or bad people. So again, no evidence to say that he was a drug dealer, but this is what the police seem to believe, that either he was a drug dealer and he owed people money, or that he just got involved in drugs with the wrong crowd and he was collateral damage. In 2012, shockingly, 2 men aged 40 and 25 were arrested in connection to Luke's potential murder, but were shortly released after questioning, and their homes were searched and their devices. That's all the information we have on that. It's just crazy that they put like that one sentence out about someone being arrested for possible murder, and that's it. So I can't give you more than what that says. But other than that, that's all we have on Luke's disappearance. It's been 16 years this May since Luke disappeared, and Nikki said that she knows the chances of Luke being alive are slim, but she wants to know what happened to him before she dies. No matter how bad it is, she needs that closure of knowing what happened. Now, let's look at some theories. I'll give you my personal theory, and then, as always, I love to know yours down below. So, Suffolk Police seem to believe that Luke's disappearance is to do with drugs or him owing someone money. Police actually came out and said they have reason to believe that after Luke finished work on that Thursday evening, he went to the park and actually done a drug deal where he sold someone coke, and he believes that him and his friends were actually doing coke further into that night. I don't know where they've got that from, but that's what police believe. They also believe that Luke had ties to some drug gangs in Brixton in London, because at the time in 2006 there was a war with sort of drugs going on in Brixton, and they believe that someone who Luke owed money to abducted him, kidnapped him, and possibly murdered him. It's very hard to say, isn't it, without knowing Luke? You can't really sit there and say, oh yeah, because he smoked a bit of weed, he's definitely a drug dealer. It's just not the case. Lots and lots of people smoke weed. It's becoming very, very popular. So I really don't want to say too much on that. But what I will say is, what are the chances that this person who Luke supposedly owes money to from Brixton is going to be driving around at 4 a.m. in Ipswich around the exact location that Luke's at? I find that really unrealistic, that chance was there for that person. It's almost 0 to none. Again, there is also no evidence that Luke was a drug dealer, and I don't want to paint him out like that at all. I'm just literally giving the facts that I've read online. Another theory is that Luke ran away because he was in debt. So again, was he in debt? Was he over his head? Did he owe someone money? And because of that, he decided to run away and just sort of get out of Ipswich to avoid facing the consequences. Although if that was the case, surely Nikki would have known something about it. There would have been signs. He also had a new motorbike that he could have easily traded in for money and paid off this person if that was the case. And also with that theory, I struggle again with it, because he does not seem like the type of guy to flee where he lives and potentially put his sister and mum in danger of their safety being compromised by these people that are after him. If he didn't even want to ring his mum to wake her up to get some money to get home, then there's no way that he would have left his family in that compromising position to suffer for his problems. I'm actually quite stuck on this case. I normally have like an answer and I'm like, yeah, that's the one, but I really don't know. It's almost like the Brian Schaeffer case, which is, I don't want to say favourite true crime case because that's not the way you should view them, but the case that sticks with me the most, the case that really racks my brain, is Brian Schaeffer. So I wonder, you know, if it's a similar sort of thing where any possibility is possible. Lastly, a theory I have is that 24-year-old man, Jimoh, he was killed. He was shot at the club the same year that Luke went missing. Could this be related at all? Could the shooting have also been due to drugs? Has this been looked into? I don't know. I think maybe he got into a car with someone and something happened, but it's crazy that there's no more CCTV of him after that. It really gets your brain going. But yeah, how can he just vanish into thin air after walking to the bus garage? His family believe that someone local knows something. There's no way that no one knows anything in that town. There's probably people right now who are in their 30s, 40s, who still know something. I think someone definitely knows something, and it's just a time to come forward and put his family out of their misery. It's been 16 years. No one deserves to go that long without knowing what's happened to their son. So if you are older now, if you were on Ipswich that night in 2006, if you know anything about Luke's disappearance, then please contact the Suffolk Police. His case is currently still being investigated by the joint Norfolk and Suffolk Major Investigation Team, and you can contact them on 014 73 613 513. I'll also put that in the description down below. Thanks for listening, and I can't wait to discuss this case below with you. Take care. Bye.